G'day, I'm Glenn Morris from the Smart Energy Lab, and today in the lab I've got Sylvia from Electro BASE. G'day, Sylvia.
G'day, how are you?
Good. Now, this is kind of funny, but this is the second time you've tried to get here and you actually made it today.
Yes.
What went wrong last time?
So last time I did have a hire car ready to go, and then last minute they wouldn't accept my driver's licence because it was a West Australian driver's licence and pop car.
Wrong country.
If you're listening, pop car. They wouldn't accept the West Australian driver's licence. So my dad said, I'll drive you down. And I didn't want to waste his time, essentially, but he insisted. So I said, we'll be gone all day. He's like, yep, no problem. And my dad's quite a fiery Croatian man. So when we got to the roadblock, it got a little bit interesting. The traffic controller there said, oh, it will only be half an hour. So that's when I tried to call you and say, look, we're running half an hour late. There was a cherry picker blocking the road. So we waited patiently for half an hour. Then we saw the cherry picker start to pack up and go, but they had only moved about, 50 or 100 metres down the road. So we were essentially stuck there on Don Road, I think it is. Then we tried to go around the other way and ended up at Moora Road at the quarry end. So,
there used to be a sign there which said, keep out, new owner has gun, which was very inviting.
Oh, okay.
Because that's a discontinued road.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sure we would have stayed out.
I think I want to give a little message to my future guests that I promise the road won't be shut for anyone else who's coming, because in the 20 years I've lived here, it's the first time they've actually shut the road. But there you go. So you had the worst experience ever of trying to get up this mountain.
I did, but it was a beautiful drive, and it's so nice to be home back in Melbourne. I'm from Melbourne originally.
Yep.
Grew up in Melbourne and went to RMIT University and moved essentially straight out of uni, so wanted to explore the world, and we can get into that, I guess, a bit later.
I'm actually interested in your career path because you're working for a company that deals in the renewable energy space. How did you come to this place?
Yeah, very, very interesting way. If I start back to the beginning, I was always very good at maths and science and the physics and so forth, and I knew I wanted to work well away from a boss, so I'm quite independent, didn't want to go down that path where there was someone always lurking over me. So I decided to get into geological engineering, actually, at RMIT, and from there I knew that I would be travelling the world, visiting wonderful sites, very much into the geology, the geological component, but the engineering aspect also grabbed my attention. So started working for Schlumberger, who are SLB now. So they've just rebranded, as all of the oil and gas companies are doing at the moment. They are rebranding into tech companies or renewable tech companies. So worked for Schlumberger for quite a while, over in New Zealand, Darwin, Timor Sea, Scotland.
Wow, you really did get around.
I did. And I remember working on the rig, and I think it was my 22nd or 23rd birthday or something. And I thought, you know what, this probably isn't the life for me to work on the rig on my birthday. With a bunch of men. I think there were 2 women basically on the rig at that time, and then moved into an office to get into petrophysics, which is essentially data analysis, geomodelling. So you work with the geophysicist, the geologist, the reservoir engineer to build the model of the subsurface, whether that be an aquifer or an oil reservoir or a gas reservoir.
So how do you make the transition from the petrochemical industry to what you call the social dimensions?
So I've always had a keen interest in social justice and injustice in general. I've actually dabbled a bit also in like a tiny house project. So that's why I was so interested in your co-op location here, because it does remind me of that.
We've got a tiny house here.
You do you?
Yeah, I'll show you later.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. So just a keen interest in that space, giving back. I know it sounds cliche, but it really does, I suppose, spark that energy within me to do something meaningful. So a project that I'm so I'm transitioning out of the consulting phase at the moment, and a project that I'm actually working on at the moment is the East Kimberley Transitional Housing Project, which is for the Aboriginal people over in the East Kimberley, not the social housing aspect, but the sort of intermediary where we give the tools and the financial advice and the temporary homes for the Aboriginal people to then transition into either private rental or private or purchasing their own homes. So they're the kind of things I've dabbled with, and it might sound a little bit, I suppose, off centre from oil and gas, but yeah, it's a keen interest of mine, the environmental and the social aspect.
Yeah, I think you're basically a modern person, which is jobs change.
Jobs change.
My dad had the same job from the time he left school when he was 14 till he retired. No one does that anymore.
No.
The world changes very fast and we have to change with it. But also you've changed. That's a big part of it too.
Yes.
What your motivations and interests have been. Yeah.
Most definitely. Circular economy is a big interest as well. So helping a company over in Western Australia called Circular Seed, who are completely changing the landscape of how we design to how we throw or consume products. And that's what I want to do with Electro BASE as well, is hopefully embed that sustainability component within the Electro BASE company.
So is the term cradle to cradle the circular economy, like from manufacture to recycle back to remanufacture?
Yes, definitely. So we need to change the concept of the actual manufacturer's way of creating to the consumer's way of thinking about consumption. So like the mobile phone is a typical example, right? Well, you want to use a mobile phone until it is no longer needed or you cannot no longer use it. But people have this mentality of, okay, well, we need to get the new latest phone every year, which is completely contrary to the circular economy. But likewise, the Apples of the world really need to design their products to continue throughout the life cycle. And of course, they just want to make money in the end, and there has to be some other ways.
I think they're doing baby steps, which is the right to repair.
Yes.
It's just starting to happen.
That's one.
Yeah.
That's a step in the right direction, yes.
So coming forward to Electro BASE, how did you come to, I should say you're the CEO.
I am.
Yeah. So how did you come
Very
to be...
recent, I might add.
That's okay.
I think it's 3 weeks and counting, maybe 3 weeks and 1 day. Actually, no, I think it's 2 weeks and 6 days, something like that.
Time for a holiday then.
Well, I've been trying to have a holiday here, but no, it's been great actually, because I can leave the kids with my parents and I'm just there working away at home, so it's all good. So how I came to Electro BASE, Perth's a very small industry, and it turns out I've actually got quite a few connections with Josh and so Josh Portlock.
I should point out to the viewers that we've actually got Josh and Ken here on the iPad listening in silently to our presentation, because that will actually bring them in a little bit. But anyway, this tiny little square is Josh and Ken. Back to you.
And so the other co-founder is Richard Charlton. So Richard has this vision of, he wanted to introduce more diversity into the culture, and also, the cultural aspects of working 4 days a week. So we do actually have a policy where you can work 4 days a week or 5 days a week. So it's very attractive to women. Women have children. We need more flexibility generally. Yes, men are taking on that role as well. So we do have Richard as well working flexible hours, because he takes the children to school and from school quite often. So that flexibility is really important. We got in contact via a mutual connection in Perth. And at the time I was actually working on a project with another company, and they're looking at biomethanol solutions. So they're looking at growing sorghum in WA need to talk to these guys as well. I reckon. they're growing sorghum into.
Link in the description. Yep.
I'll put you in touch with them. And they're looking at changing that to biofuel and also biopellets. So in Western Australia, there are these coal-fired power stations which are going to run out by the end of 2030. But one solution is, I know I digress, but this is a really interesting story. One solution is to use these biopellets in the coal-fired power station. Apparently, they have the similar calorific value. So I was working on that project at the time, and I said to my colleague, "Oh, I'm not sure if I have time for this actually," but I went to down to the Electro Aero office, and was really impressed. And Richard took me on an electric aeroplane as well a couple of weeks later. And
Oh, God. Now, I think this is a segue to all of the electro kind of businesses that fall under your purview. Mm-hmm. So there's Electro BASE. What does Electro BASE do?
So Electro BASE supplies energy storage systems to WA at the moment. So that's our target market, but we do intend to roll that out throughout Australia and the US. Rapid EV charging solutions, as well as battery storage solutions. So it can be tied to the grid or independent as well.
Right. Yeah, I saw on the website basically containerized systems that can be just dropped on site and provide
plug
power.
and play.
Yep, plug and play. That's beautiful.
These guys will be better to equip you with that knowledge.
Then there's this interestingly named Electro Aero. Mm-hmm. What's that about?
So Electro Aero was formed by Josh and Richard as well in 2014. So their idea was to create chargers for electric aeroplanes. And I do believe they started to supply a component to NASA, to the NASA electric, what was the X-57 project, the NASA project there. So that's a experimental electric plane project.
Sounds like a UFO, but yes.
Yeah, fascinating. They're still working on it. I'm not sure if we're still supplying components there, but nonetheless, then we started to dabble in making the electric aeroplanes. And this is where maybe Josh needs to also tell you a bit more about the background. But from there...
We'll come to Josh on that in a minute. But I just want to get the core thing. So Electro Aero also make chargers for electric aeroplanes.
Yes.
Now, that just blew my mind. I thought electric aeroplanes were like a long way off. And then Josh says, no, they're already here. And he shows me some commercially available ones. And I go, my gosh, Australia is so behind in EVs, let alone electric aeroplanes.
Yes. So I believe Electro Aero's main market is over in the US.
Wow.
Very small in Australia. Am I right, Josh?
Yeah, it's definitely growing, and we are a laggard country, but we're leading the world in electric aviation charging infrastructure from Perth, WA.
That's pretty cool, isn't it?
It is really, really cool. So that's what blew my mind. I mean, I just would have assumed that this would have been, if the market was in the US, it would have been a US company. But, Australia can really stand tall in some of these areas because of our technology and fast moving and developing new solutions. Electro Aero. Now there's another electro story there. What is it?
There's Electro Nordic as well. So using the technology from Electro Aero, Electro Nordic was formed. Again, Josh is the CEO of Electro Nordic and Electro BASE. Also with the technology from Electro Aero, we saw the need, particularly for the fast charging EV.
You better explain what Electro Nordic does.
I think Josh would be better.
Go for it, Josh.
Yeah, I'm going to give you the spiel on Electro Nordic. So we started this project a few years ago within Electro Aero, and it was a great opportunity to really take aerospace technology to the water. And the best way to explain it is it's like a drone that flies underwater and you sit above the water flying over the waves. So you'll see some visuals that we're sharing here of the prototype one-seater wave flyer we've been foiling with the last couple of years, and then the picture of the concept rendering of the two-seater, which we're actually building this month to start demonstrating side-by-side two-seat electric hydrofoiling. The other way to explain it is like a fighter jet over the water, because you fly with a joystick like an aircraft, and you actually carve like an aircraft. You actually bank and turn and maneuver like a flight vehicle, but it's all fly-by-wire, meaning that even though your joysticks are the input, it's only an electrical signal, and then the autopilot's deciding how much you take off and lean and steer to maneuver and keep it safe and stable. So the sort of net result is zero emissions, very low weight, extremely quiet, and extremely efficient, like 75% less energy than a conventional hull, or another way to put it is 4 times the range for a similar battery size. So we can go a lot faster and a lot less energy, and it feels a hell of a lot more fun too.
So would I be correct in saying it's a hydrofoil design?
It is. So you've probably seen these electric hydrofoil surfboards gaining popularity, and they're requiring the human to be skilled, like balancing and leaning. And it takes a few hours to get like even reasonably good at it, and many sessions to get good enough to actually maneuver. Whereas this is really the hydrofoil for the masses, in the sense that you don't need any coordination or much skill at all. It's as easy as it's easier than driving a car, in the sense that it's just a joystick. You just point the direction you want to go and tilt the direction you want to fly, and the rest is done for you.
Great. Now, can we circle back to Electro BASE? Because I want to talk a little bit about the tech side, which is kind of your forte. So you've got on the slide here a range of kind of solutions, everything from energy storage to EV charging. Why combining those two together?
Yeah, see, there's a lot of companies out there doing just solar installs, and there's a lot of companies out there who make chargers, but there are very few, if not none, that we've really identified in Australia that offer that complete turnkey solution from solar generation through to DC fast charging. And the most important opportunity we've identified is the grid independence. So as you've seen, there's a lot of off-gridding going on, or people just getting frustrated with grid connection fees and upgrade fees and whatnot, and time delays. In WA at the moment, it takes 12 to 24 months to get approval to connect 100 kilowatts of solar or more, or even a 50 plus kilowatt charger. So you're having to get these Western Power approvals, and they're expensive and time consuming. So we thought we'd cut out that complexity, or avoid that complexity until justified. And we actually do entirely grid independent solar charging. So solar into storage containers of batteries, direct DC charging vehicles, and AC charging car parks as well. And sometimes it's a combination of fleet charging. That's probably our main purpose, is fleet charging. But you'll see in the next slide, we've got a kind of jumping back and forth a bit here. But we also have a few interesting customers we've already started delivering systems to, doing hydroponics farms and replacing diesel generators. So I'll hand over to Ken to explain this a bit better. But really, wherever grid connections becoming an issue, which is almost everywhere in WA, and we're seeing it more over east as well, where you just can't get enough power connected from the grid, and you want to have a high ESG rating, we can provide that solution much quicker than the time and even cost it takes to upgrade the grid.
Before we hand over to Ken, I just want to clarify a couple of acronyms there. ESG?
Environmental service.
So we can go to Sylvia to cover that at the end.
We can, yes. So
we're very much environmentally, socially, and governance centric. And Sylvia will talk more about our sustainability goals and sort of motivation there.
So ESG is, we have to admit, a bit of a marketing term at the moment, but essentially what it is looking after the environment and the social as well as the government's component. So it's the new fancy word, I suppose, for corporate social responsibility, which is how we need to be running our businesses anyway. So ESG is just one of those
What's
terms.
it stand for?
Environmental, social and governance.
Oh, it's 3 things.
Yes,
okay.
3 things. So the environmental part the scope 1, 2 and 3. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. You would be, wouldn't you, in that?
Let's say maybe.
Okay, maybe not. So scope 1, 2 and 3. So Electro BASE will impact scope 1 and 2 because you're replacing, your hydrocarbon fuels with your solar energy. So that's directly impacting your scope 1 and 2. Scope 3 is down the supply chain in terms of the hydrocarbons that you emit. If you get a battery from China, you need to account for
the embodied energy in the product.
So yes, all the CO2 components from producing that particular product in the supply chain, that's scope 3.
Yeah.
So our goal is to, as much as possible, try and circularise everything and pick the right partners in the supply chain. So that's why we were talking to some of the Melbourne-based guys here, because we're really happy with how they source their products and create their products. And also look at the entire life cycle of the battery. So how can we recycle at the end of its use? Is it actually at the end of its use? So the titanate battery, for example, after 35,000 cycles or 30 years of life, you still have 80% capacity. So you can still continue to use that battery. So they're the different types of things we're looking at in the environmental, social and governance aspect. The social governance aspect, I would love to do some things in the future, which I probably haven't even told the guys about yet. But things like out...
You heard it here first, guys.
out in the communities, giving the communities access to reliable energy, essentially. So that would be the social component, whether that be Aboriginal communities or remote Aboriginal communities or remote communities in general. That would be the social component.
Right, cool. So, Ken, tell us what your role is.
So I've been brought on by Josh to have a look at how the technology that he's created in Electro Aero and Electro Nordic can help fix or solve problems in the energy storage market and the fleet charging that's going to eventually come in the next 5 to 20 years, when all petrol or fossil fuel-based vehicles will slowly change across to electric vehicles. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us to try and put the infrastructure in place, as everyone knows, with electric vehicles, to be able to have them charged and to on a commercial industrial scale, have them managed and utilised in the most efficient and environmentally friendly way. So I came along and looked at the products that Josh had already created, looked at where he was seeing opportunities, and then I did a bit of an assessment on the market and found out what competition was out there. I had a look at the kind of technologies that Josh was working on and where we could go, and we created these containerized battery solutions that we felt would fit into the commercial industrial space where we felt the best options and opportunities existed. For me personally, it was also a bit of a transition, like Sylvia, to do something in my life at my age to push back or give back to the community, give back to the world, because I've grown up in a corporate world. I've run my own businesses, but I haven't really had a chance to do something like this, which I can get passionate about and give back to the environment. So for me, it's a very passionate thing to be able to create these products and to put them on the ground. The two main marketing or two main problems that we are solving here are able to increase the amount of battery storage that's being installed with solar, which at the moment is less than 5%. If you look at the markets for solar installers, they can only really get 5% across the line. So how do we enable them to be able to install more storage with their solar? And secondly, to be able to provide some best value products, reliable products in the Australian market and in fact worldwide, to store energy and to have it used in an environmentally friendly way.
Great. Well, I'm really getting the vibe here. It's all about environmental sustainability and the circular economy, and these products are fitting into that worldview and the people with it. It's really great to hear this.
Yes.
So, look, I was super excited by the tech when we started talking, me and Josh initially, but now I'm just seeing the bigger picture, which is kind of why you came in as the CEO. You brought that kind of expertise from your previous employment history as well. So it's not just about the tech. So we've covered Electro BASE, Electro Aero, and Electro Nordica. Is there any more electros in your back pocket?
Good question.
I joke that we've now completed the trio of air, land, and sea in the its equivalent. So we're trying to make a positive impact in all modes of mobility. We do partner with a lot of other companies. Been involved with seed funding, some early stage funding for other companies like EV that Sylvia drove that Tesla up in, is an electric car share platform founded in Canberra, and the founder Slava does a great job there. So there's such a great community of sustainable energy companies in Australia that are kind of unsung heroes, if you will, because we have to punch way above our weight in this somewhat backwards or delayed market. Companies in the US, literally some of our customers of Electro Aero in the US have raised billions of dollars off concept renderings. So there's so much funding flooding into the industry in North America that if you just have a good idea and a reasonably capable team, you'll get funded. Whereas in Australia, at least over the last 15 years of my career, has not been easy to raise money. So I've always had to sort of organically grow the companies through school of hard knocks and cash flow bootstrapping. But I'd say there's a turning point. I'd say this year is really the turning point. Touch wood, 2023 is the point where the sophisticated investors become a bit more sophisticated on the ESG opportunities. Instead of just digging stuff out of the ground and shipping it to other countries, we could start investing in our own backyard, in our own technology, and make a real positive impact on our environment and social. So yeah, to come full circle though, a bit more to our solutions, and I know you like getting into the weeds on the technical, Glenn, so I think we could just talk a bit more about what our solutions are and how they solve these problems. Is that good for you?
Yeah, in fact, that was my next question. So thanks for the segue.
Well, good. So what we've identified, as Ken was saying, that it's hard for solar installers to sell batteries, especially in WA where there's no battery incentives yet. At least South Australia and a few other East Coast states have started to incentivise and encourage battery installation. But when there's no real financial incentive, no way of monetising the battery, it's really hard to justify the battery. However, if you think of it differently and you think, well, why are we even connecting to the grid? If you eventually want to have 100% renewable generation, especially when you're upgrading to a fleet of electric cars, trucks, buses, why not just start with a fully off-grid system? And if you've sized it for fully off-grid, you can save the connection fees, the upgrade fees, the delays and everything. So when we worked out that actually designing for off-grid, we like to use the word grid independent, because if you needed, you could still fall back to the grid. By being grid independent from day one, the battery totally justifies its existence. Like, it totally justifies being a big part of that solution because it's saved you money in other ways. So when we start sizing systems for customers who may need to pay $50,000 to $100,000 in grid connection fees and wait 12 to 24 months, well, that connection fee and the delay, more importantly, the delay is opportunity cost. If that delays them transitioning to electric cars because they can't charge them, well, that's another year or two that they didn't have electric cars offsetting their emissions. The other aspect, to be honest with you, is that just changing to electric vehicles and charging them off the majority coal-fired grid, WA at least, is really kind of just signal virtuing. So I think you do have to really solve the holistic problem of where is that energy coming from. If you're charging overnight, it's going to be mostly coal. And if you're charging during the day, it's actually still about 60% coal in WA. So to get that extra 2 to 3 times better ESG rating, you actually need to be generating your own power from solar and putting that into the vehicles. And if you plan for DC fast charging during the day, you can almost guarantee it's off the solar because you have so much excess solar. It's so affordable to install solar, as you know, that as long as you're putting that into electric vehicles, like within the few hours that you've captured it from the sun, you only need just enough battery to do that. You just need the battery buffer, effectively, to take that energy from the sun and put it in the cars when they're charging at lunchtime or an afternoon shift or whatever it may be. So, but we're also cognizant that not everyone can charge during the day. So we size our systems based on their fleet utilization. So our Energy Director tool is a software tool. We've kind of been using the word gamification for solar sizing, right? So it's a software tool where the end user can put their fleet in. They can put their number of vehicles, number of trucks, buses, cars. We're generally focusing B2B commercial customers needing fleets to be charged. So if they know their routes, they know their delivery routes or their bus routes or their typical utilization of their fleet, they can put that data into the system, like at least an estimate. And then from that, our tool will size their solar array, their battery, their chargers, and actually give them an optimal solution. And instead of them having to worry about the complexities of dealing with a solar contractor and dealing with a charger installer and dealing with the grid approvals and working it's quite a complex mix of decisions to be made. We're like a one-stop shop for solar charging your electric fleet. So we make it very easy for them to make that decision. And instead of having all that complexity that you and I are comfortable with, Glenn, and I see you have some great solar sizing tools yourself, the end user, the typical business that just wants to, get a higher ESG rating and save a lot of money by running electric fleets of vehicles. They just need to know the numbers that matter. How much are they going to save in power? How much is this system going to cost over time? So they've got that return on investment and the savings calculator. And how much are they going to get a better ESG rating or a better environmental impact? So the example there is like a typical install where they're normally paying $184,000 a year in power, but the base solution might be $95,000 a year. So they're actually saving, in this case, $36,000 a year. So just for the bean counters, the CFOs of these businesses, right there, it's a very sensible investment or commitment, should I say, to say, yep, we'll hire an Electro BASE system, install it on site, we'll pay it off. There's a few choices there as far as leasing and operational leases and whatnot. But effectively, if they're paying it off one way or another, either debt or a higher renting sort of system, the actual cost of the system on a month and a yearly basis is less than the energy saving, right? So, and that's before even factoring in that to actually generate that much, to deliver that much power from the grid, it might have cost them another 50 to 100 grand, and they might have gone up a tier in price. So they might have actually been paying peak demand charges and other things that actually compound on the fact that your energy is even more expensive now. I joke that these utility companies, you have to pay them the privilege to pay them more. You're actually paying a bigger connection fee and then a higher premium on the energy too for the right to draw more power from the grid. So like it's compounds quite a lot. So we're quite comfortable in our design tools and our sizing tools that we use, and we can do that quite quickly and fairly automatedly so that it simplifies the decision-making process for these customers, especially if they're making a big decision like ordering 2 to a dozen electric vehicles, and that's like 5 to 10 times the power that they're currently using at their site. It makes a very sensible time to make that decision. So what the actual physical hardware is, after we've done our Energy Director sort of sales tool, and it's also an ongoing support tool, is containerized smart battery systems. So I'll let Ken go through the actual product line and give you an idea of the sizing that we offer.
Sure.
Yeah, we go from just a non-containerized standalone unit, which can sit in a warehouse or a factory called Fortitude, right up to Endurance, which is a 40-foot container, competing with the top utility scale providers. In the middle, though, I'd like to point out one of our, I guess, key products that makes a differentiator with us, and that's the one with the dual electric vehicle DC fast chargers, which we call Resilience. And that one there is combined with our software, Energy Director, and our energy management software called Energy Boss, allows a drop plug and play fast charging for generally trucks or last mile delivery vehicle companies, which you can install and manage so simple and easy. The Independence, for instance, is a smaller version. We have one of those. If I go to back here, you see in the middle slide there, that's a hydroponics farm with a real Independence container, which is sitting on the left-hand side of that first screen with 65 kilowatts of solar powering a hydroponics build site, which is going to produce, was going to need 750 kilowatts of power.
12 hours a day.
12 hours a day going forward. So that is already on site, already working, and it's feeding back data through 4G network through the standard internet into our management system. We can visualize exactly what's going on with the batteries, the inverters, the solar at any time, day or night. It's a great management system.
And to give you an example, just this morning we checked it and it was fully charged by like 9:40 a.m. and it only got to like 55% capacity by the morning. So it was pretty underutilized for now. But it does show they've got plenty of headroom to make use of that excess solar. And we'll keep tracking that. We'll have alerts and monitoring systems so that if they are starting to fully utilize their solar and the battery's not getting fully charged by the end of the sunlight and they're starting to run out in the middle of the night and the generators have, our goal is not to have diesel generators turn on ever, right? So there is a diesel generator there. It's a backup system if needed, but at worst it's on for half an hour, tops the batteries back to 50%, turns off. So
I've got a question, Josh. Just a quick question. Are you an end-to-end provider then? So you take the specification, you build and you deliver and you monitor and manage?
Yes, that's right. Vertically integrated so that we make it easy for the customers. They don't have to be engineers or deal with multiple contractors.
Great. Wow. And I mean, this is an example of this is a system that's in WA, I presume, the hydroponic setup.
I just wanted to print it to finish that.
Have you spread to other states?
Look, we do have interest from Melbourne and other states, and we're definitely wanting to in the future. But for now, we are focusing on our home turf. The reason it's actually opportune time to focus on our home turf is we have the least sophisticated grid. We have no energy trading benefits, no financial benefits for adding batteries. So if we can do well here, we can do well anywhere in the country, meaning that we will eventually want to have all of these being grid tied. So this is the kind of misconception, and you've probably seen this. It doesn't have to be off grid or on grid, right? Like it's not A, B, or it's not a black and white. We make sure all of our hardware is CEC approved grid tie inverters and batteries. So we've been working hard on that to make sure that we are future proofed for grid tie. Because in the future, as South Australia and even Melbourne's starting to see now, you can actually monetize these batteries very well. I'll give you an example. We design a lot of these systems for our airport customers and aircraft manufacturing customers in the US. And we're sizing like multi-megawatt systems, like multi-megawatt hour batteries and multi-megawatts of power at these eVTOL, electric vertical takeoff and landing airport sites. So when we're sizing these systems, we need to justify the big battery, right? Like if you're putting a 3 megawatt hour battery on, it's like multi-million-dollar battery at an airport just to facilitate the high powered charging. If you're only monetizing that battery from charging these aircraft, it's a pretty long game. But if you're now also using that battery to do FCAS, frequency control ancillary services, and more advanced energy trading, that battery is now paying itself off much quicker for being grid tied than if it was off grid. So while the initial sales of our solutions are focused on solving the lack of grid and the delays in getting grid ties, we do always want to make sure we're future-proof for grid tie, because then we're future-proof for a smarter grid, a distributed grid that can monetize these batteries much faster.
Great.
If you were talking about whether we can deliver to our eastern states, though, Glenn, that's absolutely possible. We have no reason just to focus in Western Australia, and we have the experience to deliver to other states. If we had orders for them, we'd send them.
Right. Sure. I guess anywhere the sun shines?
Yeah, that's it. Anywhere the sun shines and the grid's limited is where we add the most value.
I really like what you said, that it's not off-grid really, it's grid independence, and that's kind of like the core issue is our grid is becoming less dependable. Mm-hmm. You need that independence, and also the fact that with greenfield sites you're often directly competing with connection costs. So from day one you're ahead. It's not about payback over years. It's day one, you're ahead. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing this here in my little neck of the woods in Victoria, where for greenfield sites for a home, often it's cheaper just to put in an off-grid system than connect to the poles and wires in the street because of the high cost of connection.
Insane.
Exactly. And because we have expertise in AC to DC charging and DC to DC charging and high efficiency systems, it's very affordable and easy for us to just take the power off the grid as needed. We almost treat the grid, whatever limited grid power you have, we treat that as the generator alternative. Like in the site down south, can't mention exact names, but the hydroponics example, they didn't have any grid there yet. So they had to have the diesel generator just in case. But we're like, our goal is to never have it turn on, like just there as an absolute emergency backup only. And if they start to use more than the 50 kilowatts of power we've installed, we'll just add more containers, add more power, add more solar. And eventually they need 750 kilowatts of power, 12 hours a day. So we've sized that up and it's totally doable. It's just more containers. It's a lot of 20-foot, 40-foot containers. So we can size up. As they expand their hydroponics systems, they can add more of our Electro BASE systems and sort of progressively upgrade it. So they're not oversizing too early, they're not undersizing. And when they eventually do a grid connection, they can monetize those batteries as well.
Wow, cool. Well, it's been great talking to you, Josh and Ken, and Sylvia, but I think Sylvia wants to get to see this tiny house.
I'd love to.
So
yeah,
we're going to look at the other end of the spectrum, which is very small energy demand, very small standalone system. Mm-hmm. But really excited to hear what you've done with all three arms. I love the terminology. You've conquered air, sea, and water with Electro BASE, Electro Nautica, and Nordic. Sorry, Nordic.
I got it wrong first up as well, actually. I was calling it Electro Nordic.
Yep, somewhere up north. And Electro Aero. You've conquered air, sea, and water. Fantastic. All right. Well, let's go.
Yeah,
Well, thanks for your time. We really appreciate being part of your show and sharing what we're doing with your community. And we'll definitely keep in touch as we install more solar grid independent charging solutions, and look forward to seeing what the new year brings in 2023.
Excellent.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks, Glenn.
No worries.
Bye, guys. I'll see you next week.
See ya.